One of the interesting things about writing your memoirs in a book is that as you go back and research things you experienced, well, you look at them with a new eye. Now, I'm in the process now of writing a book called 30 Years, 30 Undeniable Truths, which will be out in early 2012, if I can finish it on time. One of those 30 undeniable truths is that sometimes the good old days really were the good old days. Now, in this chapter, I recount my experiences doing many of the great pay-per-view matches featuring Marvin Hagler, Tommy Hearns, Sugar Ray Leonard, and Roberto Duran. One of the last one of those was in the 1980s that I chronicled, and it was the 1989 Fight of the Year between Roberto Duran and then middleweight champion Iran Barkley. As I researched this fight, I went back and looked for the first time in maybe 15 years at the telecast. And remember, at that time, the 37-year-old Duran was not expected to beat Barkley, who was younger, bigger, and more powerful. But counting Duran out of a fight is always a risky proposition. And that night turned out to be one of the most magical of that great decade, and certainly one of the most special of my 30 years in broadcasting. I did play-by-play on that night, working with the great Gil Clancy, who was a friend and mentor to me. I only worked as a twosome with Gil on several occasions, and they were all special. Most of the great fights of the 80s were held in Las Vegas, you'll recall, but this one was in Atlantic City. On a February night, a blinding snowstorm crippled the Northeast, and we thought that few people would show up. Instead, they filled up the Atlantic City Convention Center to see a fight for the ages. Barkley and Duran put on a show that night as good as any I've ever seen in boxing. They battled ferociously for 12 rounds. Both men were hurt several times in the fight, and Barkley was down late in the fight. Duran won a razor-thin and disputed decision that could have gone either way. It was Duran's last truly great moment in boxing, and even in defeat, it was one of Barkley's best performances. While I watched the broadcast again, I realized that if anyone else performed as well as those two fighters, that night it was Gil Clancy. As I listened to the commentary, I was reminded again that no one has ever seen the ebb and flow of a boxing match as a broadcaster better than Gil. In this match, time and time again, he foreshadowed things to come, and sure enough, they happened shortly thereafter. Now, I take pride in the fact that I have been praised on occasion for doing just that, but I assure you, I'm not even close to being in Gil's league. He was a boxing savant as both a trainer and as a broadcaster. And I get letters, emails, and tweets all the time about this fight, and everyone takes joy in remembering this special night. And believe me, it's one I'll never forget either.